Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new series on the channel. Just before we get into the interview, I'd like to mention that this is the first time I've done anything of this type of content. I do make a few goofs in the interview process. However, after extensive review, I've figured out what I can improve. So hopefully my interviews in the future will be a lot better. I do really hope you all will enjoy this, and I'll see you towards the end of the video. With that being said, release the dragon.
Release the dragon!
Kevin, thank you so much for joining me on my first ever semi-podcast. For anyone who's wondering who this is Kevin Mowrer, creator of a legendary show, Dragon Booster, from the early 2000s. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time today.
It is my pleasure, Tarkan. I always enjoy talking about Dragon Booster. As far as I'm concerned, the story is not over, and I always look forward to talking to people who are interested in Dragon Booster and watched it in its original run.
That's awesome. I can't wait to dive into that today, because you've got so much knowledge from what you've spoken about in the past and previous Dragon City forum stuff and your other forum. It's can't wait to dive into that. For a tiny bit of background for people, you have a long history with creativity. You have over 20, maybe 30 years of creativity. I really enjoy reading your blog posts as well on LinkedIn. They're very short, but they're straight to the point, and it's very easy to read and just digest. So I guess that's just your experience with creativity. It's just crazy.
Well, thank you. I have been creating and producing TV shows and even pretty heavy involvement across a number of movies for nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's I've been very lucky in that sense, and worked with some people who were just incredible creatives, and we'll talk about some of them relative to Dragon Booster as we get into this. But yeah, it's been a fun career so far. I actually have some next step is actually have some novels coming out next year. I've written a lot of scripts and a lot of treatments, and this is the first dive down into novels, so I'm going to have some fun.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Well, let's get right into it. I think we should start where you started, with Rob Travellino. You obviously met him at some point, just before you created the show and it came to production. Would you be able to tell us how you went from meeting Rob to creating this fantastic idea of a show into producing it?
Sure thing. Sure thing. I'm going to give you a slightly different timeline. Is before Rob became part of the Story Hat, and the Story Hat was my company. I founded it. I founded it just after I left Hasbro. I'm the person who founded their entertainment division and produced Transformers and G.I. Joe, Beast Machines, all kinds of shows that were a ton of fun to work on. And by the way, that's how I met Ace Fipke, who ultimately became the producer on Dragon Booster. He was working at Mainframe at the time, which was a studio that was doing CGI entertainment, right? And they had done this incredible show, the very first of its kind, which was CG, which was Reboot.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that.
It up. And it was the very first of its kind, so it is very rudimentary, but it got my attention, and I contacted Reboot and said, or contacted Mainframe and said, I would love to do CGI for Transformers. And we dove in head first. Ace Fipke was a producer there, and we not only really hit it off, but when I created Dragon Booster, I reached out to Ace after I left Hasbro and said, Ace, there's this show I want to do. I'd love for you to produce it. And Dragon Booster actually was the very first show. It put Nerdcore in business. Nerdcore didn't exist before there was Dragon Booster. And I'm the guy who did the initial art style, because I'm also an artist.
Yep.
Initial art style and the vision for the show. And just to clarify, is I created Dragon Booster, and then Rob Travolino came on when we were starting to pull it together to do the pitch to Alliance Atlantis, who was going to fund it and then distribute it. But the show not only already existed, but I'd already attached Ace Fipke. We were already underway in developing what it was. And in fact, we even had reached out to some very talented artists who were helping to conceive of what the show looked like.
Yep.
And then Rob came on, and he was writing on the show, and then also did story editing on the show. But you might find this interesting. The original concept for Dragon Booster actually wasn't even a TV show.
Yeah,
it was actually originally conceived to be a motion picture. It was going to be live action.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was the story of this extraordinary dragon, Bo, who was in the racing circuit, and he gets a thief gets hired to steal him, boost him. And it turns out that Bo, in the original concept, saw Artha, who was a thief at the time, as the chosen one. And it was all about this journey of redemption and who it was that originally wanted Bo, and they were going to take over the world. And it was this much crazier story. And of course, then we turned it into a TV show. A lot of those elements carried through. Artha, Mordred then actually picked up a lot of Artha's original role. And again, another interesting note, in all the fan emails and letters that I've gotten over the years, by far the most interesting character has been Mordred.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to ask you later on, but Mordred is your favorite character from what you've stated in the past. Why is that? I mean, I know why, obviously, but
well, it's a little bit like talking about Batman, right?
Yeah.
Batman is incredibly conflicted. He's got one foot on the side of good, and his morals hold him there, and the other foot outside of the law, because he's
100%.
not working for the law, right? So every moment he's in danger of becoming what he's fighting. Mordred is like Batman, just the other side of the line. Right?
100%.
He is on the bad side of the line, but he's being pulled over to the good side over time, and he's very conflicted because his father is the head of the world's largest crime syndicate.
Pretty much, yeah, and he's using the operation of gear as a cover, so that's 100% right. 100%.
Exactly, and I think that for fans, that's part of what makes him so interesting. Is he's redeemable. And I think stories of redemption and stories of characters who really are struggling with something are very, very interesting. Now, Artha, of course, is I mean, he's more clueless when the series starts.
Yeah.
Right? He's just like this young guy, and he just doesn't want to, his dad wants him to become a racer. He doesn't want to be a racer. He doesn't want to have a lot to do with dragons. And the dragon chooses him, and suddenly he's thrown into this.
Yeah.
So he's conflicted as well, but I think it's some of that holdover from the original story that some of the really, really vibrant and most interesting aspects of the original character moved over and became Mordred.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's so many similarities with that, and I assume because you've had to adapt it to more of a kids show, you've had to change some aspects of it, which is completely understandable. It still turned out amazing.
Thank you. It's I've been told by quite a number of pros in the business that it's remarkable. It still holds up, and
it really does, especially
we were actually the first show when I was at Hasbro. There was a period of about 4 years where we were producing more CGI entertainment than anyone else on the planet. And when I left there, no one had done a CG show that use the 2D techniques that we did. We were the first show to actually animate the textures on the characters instead of lighting them and then having this shadow that moved like oil across them.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I didn't want that look. I wanted it to really be very graphic novel. And all my illustrations were based on that idea. And Ace collaborated and helped to figure out how to do that.
That's honestly impressive because from looking at the history and stuff, the only stuff that was mass-produced CGI at the time was just high-end movies. And so I guess at the time you started working, it must have been easier for more producers at the time to get a hold of it and handle it. So, and yeah, you're definitely one of the first shows to use that, and you did an impressive job. Would you say it was difficult to work with, or did you have to like do vigorous study before you had to learn, or was it like pretty straightforward?
Well, I mean, again, I want to give Ace and Nerdcore, huge kudos
Of
here.
course, of course.
Is the production line that could create that look didn't exist before that show. So it did involve initially, I'd come to him and say, I want it to look like this. And I think we might be able to do this with textures. And he and his team would dive in and come back with these ideas about how to do this from a production standpoint. And they literally invented it. And
wow.
Again, this was crazy times.
Yeah.
The initial development before we were funded for the show was a group of like 6 people, 6 animators. Ace had rented a high-rise apartment, a room that overlooked the city, right?
Oh wow, yeah.
And this is on the West Coast up in Canada, not on the East Coast. And in that room, everybody had their computers, and there was several months where everybody, that was the office, that was the studio, was this high-rise apartment.
Yeah.
And everybody was creating little pieces of animation that we then used to go with Alliance Atlantis. And we'll talk about that because that was amazing as well.
Of course.
And pitched it to Disney. And we showed them the first tests. And Gary Marsh, who was the executive at the time, I mean, it really raised his eyebrows. He was like, this is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And we did it. We figured out how to make, I think if we'd been involved with people who were busy saying, well, you can't do that, it would have been different. But Ace and Nerdcore and then Ken Fayer at Alliance and myself, we were crazy. We didn't know what we didn't know. So we just said, let's do it this way. And it turned out it worked. It was crazy.
Well, with that being said, you pioneered pretty much CGI technology for the last 20 years. I'm just going to say 20 years. You pioneered it for everyone because Dragon Booster is, from my memory, is the first show I've ever watched CGI. Yep. And then since then, nothing can really keep up to that or hold a candle. There's only one show I can think of. But pretty much nothing else. It was ahead of its time, crazily.
It's well ahead of its time. There are really 2 shows that I feel changed the kids animation industry. One was Beast Machines, which really was the first full-on franchise, not just show, but full-on franchise that used CG. And again, there was a ton that was invented there, that had come out of the studio that was doing that. And of course, Ace was involved with that as well. He was brilliant. He is brilliant. And if you ever get a chance to interview him, I would highly recommend it. He's not only a dear friend, but he's just incredible. And that show, and then Dragon Booster, that show, because it really established CG as a thing in the kids industry, and Dragon Booster because it broke out of that highly rendered plastic surface thing and showed that CG doesn't have to be realistic. That was the first show that ever did it.
Yeah. It rewatching it, I agree with that sentiment. It doesn't have to be realistic, but it feels real at the same time. You did such a good job to immerse everyone. It's crazy.
Well, it was it was crazy times, right? I mean, literally just a few years before that, the folks over at ILM and what was happening at Pixar, ILM really created the underlying systems that then became Pixar.
Yep.
And then Pixar, did a few little test things like Tin Toy. I don't know if you've ever seen that animation. It blew everybody's mind.
Yes, I did. When I was a lot younger, though. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, along comes the first Toy Story, and along comes, and that starts to move into, what's so remarkable about both Beast Machines and Dragon Booster was it's one thing to have tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to explore and make a movie. And it's another thing to have a couple $100,000 per episode and be able to make a TV show.
100%.
And the, again, the folks at Mainframe, they cracked how to do that. And then Ace, I feel, took it to the next level.
Yeah, 100%. From doing my research, I noticed that and you've said it earlier today. Nerd Corp was created in order to get Dragon Booster running. Pretty much, you directly created a majority of people, millions of children's childhood, pretty much, because of Nerd Corp, so many other shows were created because you had an idea. And I want to thank you on behalf of millions of people.
Thank you. And I will temper that a little and say that, the names I've been listing were and are, mountainous talents.
100. It was a group effort. At the end of the day, it was
had
a group
so much
effort.
to do.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough and frankly connected to the right people at the right moment in time that these projects that I just felt passionate about were able to happen with these incredible people.
Yeah, I understand 100%. I noticed that I'm not sure if it's noticeable for a lot of people, but you used 2D backgrounds with the 3D models.
Yes.
Was there a specific reason why you chose that type of design rather than covered it in all 3D?
There were really two reasons. One was style. I wanted the background to really simplify as it moved backwards and have that very graphic feel to it, because I wanted things that were far away to all be tinted one color, and then a midground to be tinted another color, and the foreground to then be full color. And create that sense of depth. So one, it was a creative choice from a style standpoint, but then also working with Ace, it was one of the ways that we could do this incredible show for a couple of $100,000 is by doing good illustration back in the distance.
Yeah.
And again, we assembled this amazing group of artists who created those environments. And I would do initial sketches of what I wanted it to look like.
Yeah.
And then I would send it, and it would come back and it was like 20 times better.
Yeah.
And that's what you want as a creator of any show is, you want to be able to set direction, but you want people who are even more talented than you are to be able to say, now here, you make it incredible. And they do.
And
that was the reason why. So style and cost. What we did do is we created, probably 50 different buildings out of components, a whole bunch of components. So for the mid-ground and close stuff, what we could do is it was like Legos. You could move them around, relight them, retexture, and not have to rebuild.
That saves time, money.
It did. It was fantastic. As long as everything had that feel, because I wanted it to feel like heavy Eastern influence. Heavy.
Okay.
And
why is that, by the way? Well, why did you decide the Eastern influence?
It's in part, I'm also a student of mythology. And in fact, ever since then, I've gone on to I have what's called a meta story business, and many of the studios bring me in to work on their franchises and stories. And it's part of what I do is I unpack the story structure and even the mythology.
Okay.
right? So there's no question there's unbelievable mythology, dragon mythology all around the world, but most especially in the East.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted those notes in part because it could also create this sense of colorful wonder on screen, right?
Mm.
And in fact, it was so successful when I went to Japan with the
Mm.
folks from Alliance Atlantis to meet with the president of Konami.
Yeah, that was for
Right?
the Dragon Booster DS game at the
The
time.
DS
Yes.
game, that's right.
Yeah.
And we presented it, and he very, we were, it's Japan, so we were respectful.
Of course.
And we handed it over to him to ask questions. And through an interpreter, he asked, "Who is your Japanese artist?" And
Wow.
and I smiled and I
Wow.
said, and I held my hand up and I said, well, it's me and a whole team of people in Canada and the US. And he looked a little surprised and he nodded and he said, very nice.
That's gonna be
So,
like the best compliment you've ever gotten in your lifetime.
oh, it was like sake that night.
That would have been a fun night. Jeez.
Oh, it was a little crazy in the middle of, I don't know if you know anything about Japan, but we went to Shibuya and it's
Okay.
just crazy. It looked
Yeah.
like Dragon City.
Mm.
And it was just a feast for the eyes. It was incredible.
Mm. I mean, that's a really good perspective on things. That's an amazing history as well. I haven't played the game. I don't have it. It's really hard to find, so I haven't had a chance to play it. I will find it one day though.
Well, we also had
Last,
the Dragon Booster trading card game.
yes, I have. I bought that,
Oh my
and I
goodness,
got,
fantastic.
and I got
Do,
one of the cards with it.
oh, fantastic. Do you have any of the transparent cards?
No, this is the only card that I have from the
Oh,
thing.
oh my goodness. There was a whole bunch of these really interesting cards that were transparent cards,
Yeah,
where part
yeah.
of them were printed, and you put gear on your cards, and it would
Oh,
gear up the dragon with the transparent card,
mm,
and it would increase the value of the play. It was actually really, really innovative.
yeah. I couldn't really find much information on your card game, to be honest. It wasn't. I'm not sure. So you know more than what's out there at the moment about it, to be honest. I think last thing on like the technical side and bringing up the show, you made your own alphabet for the show, which is
Yes.
crazy. I saw that on your website. Was that a hard thing to do? It seems pretty
Terribly
chill,
hard.
but
It was, but it's a real alphabet, and
Mm,
it's based, it's based on the Western alphabet, but
mm,
it turned it all into the dragon characters,
mm.
the little
Yes.
incised characters. And we actually went to a group that was in LA who specialized in type development.
Oh, okay. Yep, yep.
And this was, kudos to Alliance Atlantis. They funded the whole thing. I mean, Ken Fayer, again, who now actually has his own production company and development company in Toronto.
Yep.
And I still work with him. Ken Fayer was the exec at the time, and he believed in the show. And again, he was one of the people who made the whole thing possible. And it was incredible. I mean, he sold it all over the world, and he funded things like, making the alphabet. And it was just so cool. And it's a true type. You could download onto your computer and literally type in the
Yeah,
draconian font.
that's awesome. That's amazing. Honestly, you did so much for the community, and you made a great show. That's that's
Thanks.
impressive. Not many people do that anymore. They just make a show and they're like, watch it. But you're just like, here's a good show and here's more content that you didn't
Well,
even need
I
to do.
really, really, really believe that the show is what you watch to get inspired, but then, how can you make it so that people can have agency, right? Can then game with it, can communicate with it, can do all those things that if you do the show right, people want to wrap themselves in it. And my belief, honestly, that's a big part of what I do now for the studios, is I really believe you have to be all about fan service. You have to
Really,
do the
really,
right things for the fans.
yeah, okay. Because there's there's a recent topic about fan service and is fan service good or bad? Um, and I think the conclusion was if it impacts the story in any way, then it's bad. But if it's just there because it's part of it, then that's fine. I'm not sure if you would
I
agree with
guess it
that.
depends how you define fan service.
Of course, yeah,
To
no,
me,
that's fair enough.
make a great story, know your craft, do
Yeah,
something hopefully, relevant, powerful, meaningful, and that really people want to immerse themselves in. Then the fan service part is then what does it go to? And what have you built into the original story that will allow that?
sure, sure.
And this isn't about product placement. I
No,
hate
of course
product
not.
placement. It blows up stories, right? It does.
I can see that. It does. I
Right.
agree.
After I
100%.
left
100%.
Hasbro, they did some G.I. Joe movies that were absolute stinkers. And it's because they jammed all these toys
Mm,
into the movie. It was terrible.
yeah. I think I did see a couple of them. I wasn't a big fan, so I never got into GI Joe. So I
I'm
think that
not
was
sure
more of an
anybody got
American
into
thing.
G.I. Joe off those movies.
That's fair enough. Um,
And I say
I
that with
think
love, because
no,
no,
of course,
seriously, I really, really have I owe Hasbro a lot.
mm,
But we don't all do perfect things every
no, of
time.
course.
Sometimes
It
we make
You're
mistakes,
more harsh on the things that you love, pretty much.
for sure,
Um, and I 100% agree with that.
for sure.
Um, we'll move on to more, more, a bit more with production stuff. Um, I think the first big thing is the show had 3 seasons, and you were anticipating season 4, 5, so on and so on, because of the way you and Rob answered the questions on your forum. Um, in order to envision your entire idea for the show, how many more seasons were you hoping to get out there before you could wrap it up?
In my mind, I always felt there was two more seasons to the
Two
show,
more, two more. Okay,
two more, and those seasons would have been um, the Academy,
Academy. Yep, season
right,
4.
and then the Dragon Human War.
Oh, so you would have went straight into it,
I would have gone
pretty much.
from the Academy into the
Mm,
Dragon Human War. And was that 2 or 3 seasons or 4? But those are the two big moves in my mind that needed or would have wrapped up the series. Now, do I think that now?
mm.
No, I've had a lot of time to think about it, and
Yeah, yeah,
your example, but the audience for this show now isn't just kids.
yeah. Yeah.
And so on a go forward basis, to me, I want to spend more time with Mordred. I want to spend more time to the left and more time to the right, and
Mm,
I may even go back a little in time, and
yeah.
because it's a world, right?
Yeah. Okay, then so your original vision was 2 more seasons. Your current day vision, would you have done more than two? Would you have probably done 3 or 4?
Absolutely, yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I also think we're in a different age in television now. The
Okay.
back then, a season was 13 21-minute shows, and
Yeah,
30
pretty
minute but
much.
21 minutes with commercials, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. We're in the age of streaming, and
Interesting.
you can have a series where one episode is 13 minutes and the next one is 42, right?
Pretty
The
much.
the streamers, yes, they like a certain consistency, but you don't have to do that. It's about the story that you're telling and how you unravel it, unroll it. And I would take more time so that we could see more of the world and spend more time with each of the characters.
Honestly,
And
that would be amazing.
yeah, for
That would have
sure.
been amazing.
Well, not only that is the dragons in the show were actually there to teach us something about what it means to be a human. So one dragon that was about fear
Yep.
is going to teach us the conversation about what it means to be afraid and how you deal with that and how
That
different
was.
characters deal with that.
I think you're talking. I think you're referencing the Prophesy, the orange dragons.
Yes,
I
yes.
think. Yes. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am.
Uh,
And then that, like the episode with the Furox, where you're dealing with rage, and you're every single different kind of dragon was actually conceived to be about a different conversation about who we are and what we do. And
that's
and
fair.
I think you slow that down a little bit more, and you spend instead of just one episode per dragon type, you spend two or three.
Hmm.
And you really exercise those subjects, and you build up the tension even stronger. And definitely, I would see more than just two seasons.
Honestly, I hope you can get rebooted for the show. That would be awesome.
It's
That would be fantastic. Honestly.
well, we shall see what happens. It's not easy to get a show on these days, and
Hmm.
all in the last year, all the shelf space for especially kids TV show have gone. It's less than 10% of what it was 2 years ago.
Jeez. Wow.
So it's very, very hard to get a show placed at this moment in time. But
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, makes
that's
sense.
that's if the next thing I do is a show on Dragon Booster. I've always felt it's an extremely strong publishing program.
Yeah, it is 100%. And I think a lot of other people would love to see it, especially new audience these days, because I'll say it right now instead of a bit later. A really good thing about the show is you used to talk about adult themes in the show, but you never did it. You never did it in a such a direct way, whereas in your face, you made sure you went around it slightly so it hit a bit softer, but it was digestible and you could appreciate it a lot more. For example, the episode Misjudged, when you had a waist down paralyzed character, Kawake. Uh,
Yes.
Honestly, I don't remember seeing that as a kid, but seeing it now, I was just like, holy.
Well,
um,
that's to Rob's credit.
yeah,
That was
really.
his
Okay.
concept. That was
Yeah.
Rob's concept.
Mm. That's
He's the one who came up with Kuwait.
that was a that was a great episode. Honestly, because it has all the morals that you need in a show, but it doesn't throw it at you. It's more like just think about it for 2 seconds, pretty much. So your favorite character is Mordred. Let's take it from the opposite perspective. What was the most frustrating character to work with, or maybe model, and so on for the
The
show?
most frustrating character to work
Mm,
with. That's a tough one to answer because honestly, I didn't find any of the characters frustrating to work with. And they were all equally modeling. It was modeling.
yeah,
Um, so I didn't find any of them terribly
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
difficult characters because they were each of them had a path and a role through the show,
Mm,
and we knew what those were. And of course, it wasn't just me and then Rob working on the writing side. There was quite a few writers that we brought in too.
yeah.
And there was also Ace. I mean, Ace creatively contributed to every single one of these shows also. So I don't know. It was an incredible show to work on. So
Of course. Um, I think more with the editing type of view. A more obscure fact I have not seen anywhere online. With Parman Sean, or Parmesan as he cheekily called him in the show by Lance, uh, he had an actual inflect during his auditions. He put an inflect on how he was talking. That was removed. I was curious to what changed with that small thing. I know it's something small, but for me, it's like that's a big deal.
so the can you expand on that? Because I'm not sure I
Uh,
understand the
it sounded like he had an accent, but for me, it was more of an inflect on some words. I don't really know how to explain it. I'm not the best at descriptive
hmm.
language.
Oh, well, there was a lot of this. It was Lee Tokar who did the voice
Yep.
for Parman Shan. And by the way, Lee was is one of the most talented voice actors I've ever met.
Mm.
He did a lot of different voices in the show.
Yeah.
And he was this incredible actor in doing it. We did find that there were some actors who they had a very strong Canadian inflection.
That's probably what I was hearing. Because
And so
I
what we
didn't know
did
where that's
is we
from.
worked
Yeah.
with them so that it was more sort of just broad.
Okay. Okay, that makes
And
sense. Yeah, yeah.
so that may be what you heard.
Probably.
And
I've never
but
heard a
nonetheless,
Canadian
he was
accent. Yeah.
incredible.
No, of course. They did a fantastic job. And like, for example, Mark Hill, amazing. I love all of his work. He does every other voice actor as well. Um, I'd say my favorite was Word. I think you portrayed him as this evil, conniving person in the show, but I don't think he would have been. You wouldn't have delivered it that well without the voice actor for it. I've just forgotten his name, but he was so good.
Well, there's a story behind that. Word, the gentleman who did the voice acting for Word was an employee of Nerdcore. And
Okay, okay, interesting.
when we were doing, you always do what's called a scratch track, which is just anybody who's in the studio will grab a voice and do the voice just so that they can start working on the animation while we're recording the voice acting, right?
Okay, okay,
Well,
yep,
we
yep,
were
yep.
doing we Word, and we were getting some pretty good auditions. And then we heard the scratch track with this gentleman on it, and we went, "Oh my God, that's Word!
Mm.
There's
That's
nobody better." So he got the role, and he was just recording the scratch track.
that's so, and that became Mark Oliver who did that.
Yes,
And now he's gone on because of that. He's gone on to do so much more fantastic voice acting.
yes.
So you're both creating a perfect show and future careers for so many people. It's crazy. Sorry, I'm a bit lost for words at the moment. You've given me so much more information to work with than I wasn't expecting. I was like here ready to like follow a script and you're just like, no, here you go. I do have to compliment you, I think, with what you said earlier, where Arthur was chosen by Bo and thrusted um, into the adventure of being the Dragon Booster. I think it's very consistent with your philosophy about following the hero's journey. And I'd just like to compliment you. You followed that almost every episode to a T, except the double episodes, but like, those continued, so it's whatever. But I think you followed that quite well, and because of that, it held the show up. Because the hero's journey, you can't really go wrong with that.
It was that part was pretty classic.
Yeah.
We were standing on some big shoulders there.
Mm.
We didn't invent the hero's journey. We
Of
wrote
course,
in
of
it.
course.
But there was also a little bit of the Arthurian legend there too, because
Okay.
you know, again, when I originally conceived of it, part of the way I would talk to people about it is think of Bo like he is Excalibur. He's the sword,
Mm. Yeah.
and along comes
Arthur
Arthur slash
Penn. Yeah.
Artha,
Arthur. Yeah.
who's just this kid who, he's on one track and he doesn't want to this big role, and he pulls the sword out, right? Well, the same thing happens. Is Bo is like Excalibur,
Mm.
right? That
Yeah, for
he
sure.
chooses him, and he didn't want it, he didn't ask for it. It blows up his life, which is all good writing, right? It's all good fun.
100%. 100%. Um, we only have 15 minutes left. We may have to do a part two if you're interested, because I'm not sure if I
We
can
will.
get
We can
to.
talk offline about that. Yeah.
Okay, no stress. Um, in that case, I'll save the more uh I'll save more of the personalized show questions for the next episode. Awesome.
Cool.
Because I think I think it's for the moment, it's more interesting getting your philosophy on so many more things because you created such a good story and you continue to create really good stories. So I think if we can get like a good philosophy behind what you did and then straight into the show, people would see things differently, get an alternate perspective on how things work. Personally, I think that.
The
Um,
I think you have some of it from what we've been
yeah,
talking
for
about.
sure, for sure.
It's but overall, I think if there's a philosophy um, behind the show is one. We with Dragon Booster, it's important that we don't forget that it's a fairy tale, right?
Yeah.
We're in an age where I think there's a lot of entertainment that's being done that is very edgy and very hard, and
Mm,
kill the baby. That's it, this is more akin to the way one should think about Star Wars,
oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
Is
I've
it
definitely
is a
grown up
fairy
with that.
tale, and
Mm,
it is meant to at the end of the day for you to be able to inhabit it and see yourself in it, but also to feel hopeful and feel positive, not in a Pollyanna or Trolls kind of way,
yeah,
right? Those have their own thing that they're doing, um, but
yeah,
it conforms more to the sort of classic mythology, which is meant to sort of be held up and go, I actually want to be that guy.
true.
And
That's true.
and I think we all worked very hard on that in the writing, and we worked very hard on that in the animation. And the other philosophy was to let the show breathe. If you watch it, I've been involved in many other shows where when you're a writer, generally you think about a page a minute, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
a 21-minute show is 21 pages, right?
Okay.
A lot of the writing that was done on Dragon Booster was like 19 pages. And
Okay. Yeah,
the
yeah.
reason
I
for
see that.
that was let it breathe, be able to, we're in a place of wonder. If you can't watch the dragon run, if you can't watch the slow-mo incredible leap that's going on, or this amazing city, then all we're doing is we're talking at high speed and we're trying to follow along with the camera, and we're not allowing the place to be an actor as much as the actors.
Sure.
And there's some new animation being done these days that's actually doing that really well, right? I don't know if you've
Mm.
seen Blue-Eyed Samurais, for instance.
No, I have not.
Oh my
Not yet.
goodness, watch that.
That's on my list. It's on my list though.
Watch that, because that's another one where it takes its time. Spend some time. The if you're listening to jazz, what's
I
most
love jazz.
important in jazz is the moments of pause.
True. I can definitely agree with that.
Pause, right? It's the same thing with great storytelling, is
Mm,
the moments of pause allow you to breathe in and allow what's happening to become part of you.
mm.
And that was a clear philosophy from the very beginning for everyone that was involved with the show is, show it as often as tell it.
100%. I really enjoy listening to your philosophies. It's crazy. It's because you come from such a creative background, you give us this alternate perspective on things. That's why I enjoy talking to creators, artists, producers, and so forth, because they have this perspective that you don't see. And they put so many small details into the show. For example, with the breathing bit, you use so many panning shots. Used quite a lot of panning shots of dragons either running, jumping from buildings, or like zoom in shots on like pen racing, for example, um, skyline shots, and so forth. And that goes perfectly with what you said. You gave everyone breathe. You gave everyone space to breathe, but and it wasn't rushed or anything. It made you go with that flow. So 100% agree with that philosophy.
Awesome.
From what you said earlier in the interview, about where your ideas came from, I read in one of your blogs from ages ago that Dragon Booster was actually inspired by a novel you written in the past. I'm not sure if that's correct, but it's what I've.
That a novel that I wrote?
Uh, you said it. You was inspired by a book I'm not sure if you wrote it at this point. It was inspired by a book. That's what I think read on one of the blogs. I don't know. I've been
I don't
okay.
remember if that was a
All good.
post that I put on there or somebody else put on there. I definitely didn't write a book about this ahead of time.
Okay.
And my inspirations for this, yeah, I mean, there was a number of feeder things, ideas. Did you find something?
I've written is from a short story you created. It was an inspiration from a short story. I guess not. I'm pretty sure I read it on one of the blogs. Unless it was, I'll have to double check that source.
I may have posted that about the original story for Dragon Booster. That was the story about the thief.
Okay, I think that's what it was about. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's
I think
definitely where this started. There was even a short period of time where we were in conversations, where I was in conversations to have it made into a video game first.
Okay.
And you know, the truth about talking to video game companies is they actually don't want to, from the ground up, do a brand new property that's somebody else's. They want their own.
Yep. Okay.
Which makes
that
complete
makes
sense,
sense.
right?
That makes sense.
Now, if you go out and you make success happen, then you can come back and talk about a video game. So,
100%. I think to wrap up, we'll talk about something a bit different, but still more in the creative aspects of yourself. You're currently working on a new show, Haley and the Hero Hearts, at the moment. You're both producing and writing that at the moment. How are you enjoying doing that show?
well, the show itself is just about finished. It's got its last few episodes in post. It's definitely for a very different audience.
Yeah, 100%.
It's for a 4 to 6 year old girls.
Yeah.
And having a ton of fun working with the folks at Epic Story Media, Ken Fayer's company.
Yep.
And just really enjoying it. I'm showrunner. I'm doing the story editing on the show. Right. I've written some of the episodes, but of course, as showrunner, you kind of touch a little bit of everything. But again, an incredible group of very, very, very talented people put that together. That one's doing some things also visually that are kind of new. Okay. Can't tell you too much more until it actually gets out there, but thank you for asking.
No worries. I thought because we had a little time left, I thought maybe we'll promote something you're working on at the moment, which was that. I've only seen one episode because I wanted to suss it out. I think maybe what you're referencing, I think I may know what you're referencing to, but I may leave it for another time. I'm not too sure. You're happy for me to guess? I don't mind.
For guess about what now?
The new sort of you said you're working on something slightly new.
You can guess. I may not answer you, but you can guess.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I think it's the art design and the way you've done it. They don't have the black outlines on them. To me, that's
that
new.
part
I don't really see
is true. There are no black outlines on it, so win for you.
I don't know what else because I don't know what else, but I've definitely sent that to offer to a friend because he's got a couple kids. So I said, show your kids this; they may like it. You know, respect. I have a trusted creator.
Fantastic, fantastic. The most current project I have, aside from that, as I mentioned, is in publishing. I've always been fascinated by the story of Frankenstein.
Oh, okay.
So I have reinvented the story of Victor Frankenstein. And I've written now 2 novels. They both come out next year. There's a third coming out by the end of next year.
Okay.
Yes, it's forebearers for Frankenstein is horror, but I'm pulling it into the world of adventure, and it's kind of steampunk.
Oh, I like steampunk.
And it's some pretty wild stuff happening in the adventure. So I don't want to give away the book, so I can't tell you too much more.
If anyone who's watching this, go check that out when it comes out. Make sure to buy every single copy out there.
Well, if anybody's interested, go to kevinmowrerauthor.com and sign up for the mailing list because anybody who signs up for that actually gets exclusive artwork that comes
Oh,
out once a week.
yeah,
Because I illustrate as I write, so I've got hundreds of pieces of it, and I like to reward people who are along for the ride. So
for sure. I'll link that in the description below. Um, so they click on it easy. Thank you so much for joining me, Kevin. It's much appreciated. Hopefully we can do a part 2, get more into the juicy details of the show. However, I've really appreciated getting your philosophy today. I think it's fantastic. You've done everyone a service just by wanting one idea out there. You've done everyone a service.
well, thank you for saying so, and I'll continue to say team effort. So, and thank you
Team
for
effort,
having me on. This
of
has
course.
been a real pleasure in
Yeah,
every way. And absolutely, to anybody who's into Dragon Booster, thank you all. What we do as creators is nothing without people who find it meaningful.
of course.
So I'm just super grateful for that. And so give me a holler separately and we can talk about doing this again.
Hi again, boosters. Thank you very much for watching till the end. And thank you again, Kevin, for joining me on an interview. It's been very much an honor. I have linked Kevin's website for his upcoming book, so you can get some fantastic artwork weekly when you sign up. I very much look forward to his novel when it gets published. This episode was more encompassing the philosophy of Kevin and how the show was created. We have a part 2 planned coming out, which will be more in-depth details of what the end of season 4 would have looked like and season 5. There also may be some unreleased content and unseen content that will be in the next episode, so look forward to that. To anyone who has found out about Dragon Booster through this video, or is an OG fan looking to rewatch the show, you can watch that on Prime at the moment. I've linked it down below to make things easier for you, and it has the best quality you can probably watch it. Every view given actually does go back to support Kevin as well. I can confirm that. I have also attached my socials down below, so if you'd ever like to reach out or you'd like to catch me while I'm streaming, I'll see you there. With that being said, I will see you in part 2. Don't forget to release the dragon.